Today we are going to actually place our buildings on the level by selecting the specific building on this building bar, right? So for example, if I select this lumber hut, here you can see now it's dynamically moving on our map. And also if I try to move it alongside this sort of a slope area, it's not overlap with the landscape. Instead of that, it's properly determine its hit location, right? So today we are going to implement this feature for our RTS game. Alright, so let's see how we can spawn a building whenever we click on this specific resource building items. So here actually currently we have placed our resource buildings manually on the map just for the testing purposes. But when it comes to actual gameplay, we should be able to place these stuffs dynamically whenever you want on your or whatever the place you want on your level, right? So let's see how we can do that today. So first, actually, this is the function with respect to that specific click event. So whenever we click on a specific building item, it should spawn a resource building. Okay. Okay. So so we can implement that function inside our BP building manager. So let's create a function called spawn building. Okay. And then as the input, I can take a building class which is BP building base class reference, and then let's get the building and spawn actor from class, right? And as the spawn transformation, basically we have to get the current cursor location, right? So how we can get that? Yeah, maybe first let's spawn in the 0th location. So I'll make a transform like this, and I'll promote this as a reference called building to be placed. Okay, so basically this will spawn a new building. And then actually we have to check whether we have an already instance initialized on this variable, which means if it is valid, we have to destroy that actor, right? Otherwise it will override, it will spawn multiple actors, right? Which is not ideally what we want, right? We should be able to spawn only one building at a time whenever we do a selection. So I'll comment this thing out, maybe if already selected, if already building is spawned to be placed, then destroy it. Alright, Now we should be able to call this function inside this building item by referencing our building manager. So do we have a utility function called get building manager? No. So let's create it. So at our BFL RTS game utility function library, actually this whole set of global functions that we can reuse on the other items or other classes in our game, right? So let's create a new function called get RTS game building manager, right? And this should be a pure function, and let's get all actors of class which has been placed on your level, the type of PP building manager, and if we have at least one valid reference, then we have to get the very first item and we can simply return it. If we haven't got any valid building managers on our level, we simply return a null value, right? So make sure you have a valid reference to your building manager on your level, right? So I have been already placed this BP building manager actor component or actor on the level, so I have a valid reference already, right? So this will return a valid reference over here, right? And it's better not to have multiple instances of our BP building manager because at the end we are only referring to a one valid instance, right? Okay, so then let's go to the WB building item and let's call that utility function which is get RTS game building manager, and let's spawn our building. Okay, right. So I'll promote this to a variable called building class, and I'll assign it to this setup category and make it instant editable and expose on spawn. So now we have to initialize this variable for each building item on our building bar. So let's go to the WB building bar and design overview, and let's first select this number hut, and as the building class let's use this BP number hut, and for the barn we can use BP barn, and for the mine we can use BP mine. Finally for the house, for the house actually we currently don't have any reference, so I'll keep it as like this, right? So basically in future episodes actually I will create a specific class for our house, then we can assign this value later on, right? So it won't be an issue, but make sure to assign these three values because we have already instantiated several actors for these building types. Okay, so then everything was initialized and this function will be called and it will spawn a new building at this specific location, which is 0th position, right? So let's test this thing. And I'll select this one. Yeah, so ideally we should spawn a building at the 0th position, right? Right, so I think the building is spawning, but we need to figure it out what's the 0, 0, 0 location is, which is the origin point. So So let me place the cube over here, and maybe let's make its location as 0, 0, 0. Okay, so you can see that the actual 0, 0 location is on the ground, right? So that's why we can't see any building spawn. So for now, I'll take this location, right? So I just use this cube as a placeholder to determine some location. So let's use this location instead at the spawn building. So this should be 159, and I'll move this thing over here. Let's try to play it again. Okay, so this is our cube. So when I press this thing, it should appear a building, but seems like it's not calling properly. So let's quickly debug it. Let me print string over here. Yes, so as you can see, actually it's not working properly. The first thing would be yeah, so this is the issue actually. So initially we don't have any buildings that has been spawned, so I just plug it like this, like if it is already exist, then we have to destroy the actor, but if it is not exist, so this is the is not valid reference, right? But it's not plugged into this spawn, so that's why actually our building is not spawning properly. Yeah, so this execution pin should be go over here, so I'll make it down a little bit like this so you can see it properly. So now let's play it again. Yeah, so here you can see now our building is spawned, and if I try to choose a different building, that the specific building is displaying over here, right? But if I select the house, obviously it will not spawn any building right now, because simply we haven't added a proper reference yet. Also, you can see now there are certain characters that has been spawned on the map, but they are not ideally should be spawned at the very beginning when we are selecting a specific building. Right? It happens because of the way we set up our game initially, right? So we can actually tweak these values, tweak these configurations later on to not to spawn the workers directly, right? But right now the functionality works properly, right? Ideally what we wanted to spawn a building. Okay, so I'll remove this debug text, and then next what we need to do is, instead of manually placing our building like this for a static location, we need to determine our mouse location, and based on the mouse position, mouse cursor position, we have to spawn our building on the actual map, right? So in order to do that, actually we need to create a trace channel first. Let's go to the project settings, and under the collisions, let's set a new trace channel called flow, right? And by default I'll make it as ignore and accept. Okay, and then we have to assign that trace channel to this flow landscape, right? So this is the landscape that we need to spawn our building. So we need to sense this first by using our trace channel. So under the collisions and at the collision presets, I'll make it custom, and our trace channel is now visible over here, right? The flow. And yeah, so I'll keep everything as it is. So let's see how it works. In case this one is ignored, you have to make it block, right? Otherwise the trace won't work properly, right? So make sure it is blocked over here, right? And then let's go to the building manager. So this is the function actually responsible for spawning our actor, a building actor at this static location. And instead of that, I need to spawn it on runtime, and that location should be dynamically vary based on the cursor position. So actually we can use the event tick to do this thing, but later on we can do certain optimizations for that as well. But first let's do our initial implementation with event tick. So let's get the player controller, and here there is utility function called get hit results under cursor by channel, right? So this is a very useful function to determine our hit location based on our cursor position. And I'll split the hit struct, and then if our building is to be placed is a valid reference, and if we have a actual hit result, then we can vary the building's position, right? Then we can set actor location like this. So the location should be hit result location, right? So I'll comment this thing by saying building placement with respect to the actually not the grid snapping, building placement with respect to cursor position, right? But later on we are going to implement the grid snapping as well, but for now let's use this location. Okay, so let's play test again, and if I select, yeah, it works, but you can see some error, right? That location is constantly changing. Okay, that's because of we are going to do this trace channel with respect to the flow trace channel. We have to do this tracing with respect to the flow trace channel, but right now it's doing the visibility trace channel. It is somewhat global tracing feature, but instead of that we need to use flow. Okay, and then let's play it again. Okay, so we don't get an actual hit yet. Let me check whether we have a hit result. Alright, so you can see it's always false, which means our tracing is not working properly. So let's check this first. Well, ideally it should work. So maybe let's try it again by restarting the engine. Sometimes these collisions may need, after you implement these collisions, sometimes you may need to restart your engine as well. So I'm not quite sure, but yeah, so let's try a restart. Okay, so I just restarted the engine, and now if I click this flow again and go to the collision tab, here you can see it has initialized as ignore, right? So that's why I told you before, like sometimes when you're initializing these sort of collision trace channels, you have to restart the engine because the default values can be not initialized correctly, right? So make sure to tick this block under the flow trace channel, right? For trace response channel. Okay, so now if I play it again, here you can see now it properly detecting a valid hit location on the map. So if I select the building and try to move it alongside my cursor, you can see it's updating properly, right? And you can see even in this sort of a slope area, our building is not overlap with the landscape, right? It's properly oriented with the landscape and it determines its location. But here, as you can see, that our AI character is moving. So yeah, later on I will fix that issue as well. But yeah, so it's working. And yeah, let's disable that print string because we don't need this one. And yeah, so this is the what we want, what we require to be happy. Great. So yeah, so in the next video, let's try to do some optimizations or maybe grid snappings, things like that. So I'll see you there. Thank you.